Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Ari, and today we're going to have some more stories about our toxic life. But before we start, it would be so much appreciated if you would subscribe to my channel, like the video, if you enjoy it, and maybe leave a comment down below. These simple clicks would mean a lot to the future of this channel and really reward the effort that I put in every day. And now without further ado, let's go. Today's first story. In this story, after meeting at a wedding, Andrea and Opie quickly became romantically involved. Despite early signs of trouble, including Andrea's online flirtation, they married. Later, he catches Andrea cheating with their close friend. Heartbroken, he exposes their plan to divorce their spouses. Andrea confesses, revealing the affair began shortly after their wedding. He devastated and divorces her, feeling deeply wounded and unsure if he can love again. Now let's get into the story. Andrea and I met at a mutual friend's wedding. We were paired to do the groomsmen and the bridesmaid couple dance and exchanged contact after that. As time passed, we became close friends, followed each other on social media, commented on each other's pictures, and started hanging out from there. About 4 months after we met, I asked her to be my girlfriend, and shortly after that, she moved in with me. I know you will all be mad that I asked Andrea to move in with me after 6 weeks of dating, but I did that because I was madly in love with her and wanted to wake up next to her every morning. She was a nice person and great company, at least for the time we were still together, and I enjoyed being around her. She was intelligent and funny, and I loved her sense of humor the most. I worked as a real estate consultant while she worked remotely. She was a web developer, and most of her jobs were done from home, except when she wanted a location change. We dated for 2 years, and at one time, I thought we would break up. Although this isn't the main part of what happened between us, it all adds up. During the first year of our relationship, there was a time she suddenly started acting cold toward me, and we no longer bonded like we used to. Before her change in attitude started, we used to cook together, talk about my day at work, and she would talk about how easy or challenging her work was that day too. But suddenly, I noticed she changed and would focus more on her phone and leave me to stay or watch television alone. Eventually, I found out she was flirting with someone online, and they were planning to meet the following week. I was so mad that she was flirting with some guy she met on Facebook, and they planned to hang out together the following week. Their chats were provocative, and the most annoying part was that she didn't tell him she was in a relationship or try to stop him from flirting with her. It was almost like she enjoyed it. When I confronted her about it, she apologized and said they were only playing around and it was nothing serious. She blocked him to prove to me that there was nothing serious between them and promised it would never happen again. Now that I think about it, that should have been a red flag for me. Although flirting with someone online is not enough reason to quit a relationship, I should have ended things with her because no one knows what level their flirting would have escalated to if I did not find out. Well, a year after that happened, we married. We never had issues of her flirting with anyone again, and I never found anything suspicious on her phone on the days I would unexpectedly ask to go through her phone. We were married for 2 years and didn't have any children because we didn't want any. Meanwhile, there was this very close friend of mine who was like a family friend, and his wife and Andrea were very good friends too. We had this small group of friends, for married couples and 2 single men. We didn't exactly form, but we were always hanging out as a group and supported one another in good and bad times. Aside from family, they were my support system, and if one of us was going through a tough time, say financial problems, we would all help out in any way we could, even if it meant contributing some money. When things were good, we would all dine and celebrate together. One day, I had recently sold a very expensive house to a client that had been giving me a tough time, and I had already told my friends that if a contract clicked, I would throw a $500 dollar bill. The party was meant to only be for the members of our friendship group by adding 3 more people, making us a total of 13 people minus their kids. During the party, I realized my phone battery was already low, so I went to our bedroom to get my charger or probably charge my phone there. But somehow, I got distracted by a short funny video one of our friends dropped on our group chat. Coincidentally, immediately after the video stopped playing, I heard my wife giggle and talk in a hushed tone with a man. They didn't know I was in our bedroom, and the door was partially open. So they stopped to kiss briefly before entering the kitchen, and I was so shocked. I didn't actually see them kiss, but I knew they did because of the sound I heard. I was so heartbroken, and I could not believe Andrea was cheating on me after all the promises she made. It wasn't just her cheating that hurt. She cheated on me with my closest friend in her group. The funny thing was that his wife was in the living room with their 2 daughters, completely ignorant of what was happening. I was so boiled up and thought of confronting them, but I knew it would only make things worse, primarily because of how angry I was. So I went to the kitchen, but before I entered, I announced my presence with a mild cough, so they could have enough time to pretend nothing was going on between them. I talked to them briefly, grabbed a bottle of water, and left. But before I did, I turned on the voice recorder on my phone and left it in a very natural position so that they wouldn't suspect anything was fishy, even if they saw it. Shortly after they left the kitchen, I took it and listened to everything they said. They were planning to hang out that night, and my wife already devised the perfect plan to get rid of me. Hearing that even broke me more, so I devised a plan. Before that time, I had learned a couple of audio editing hacks, so I edited the audio and highlighted the part they talked about their affair and how they would get rid of us in no time. By that, they meant Andrea divorcing me and her affair partner would divorce his wife. Later that night, I allowed her to proceed with her plan and pretended I didn't know anything. I had been heartbroken twice in the past, so my heart was already used to that kind of pain. The following day, I anonymously sent the audio to all her friends' email addresses, including her affair partner and his wife, and waited for everyone to react. First, they were shocked at what they had heard and could not believe it. I knew they had listened to the audio when one of them called and asked if I had gotten any audio from an anonymous email, and when I said no, he forwarded it to me. I pretended to be shocked and used the opportunity to confront Andrea. Honestly, I thought she would deny it and act innocent, but she started crying and begging me. She said she cheated on me because she wanted options, and she felt she was stuck with me and kind of felt suffocated. Then she begged me to forgive her and not let her infidelity ruin the future we were building. The audacity. Concerning her talk of wanting to have options, I was shocked to hear that because Andrea was the same person who told me she was a one-man woman, and she never cheated on her spouse and would never do that. So it was all surprising to hear that she wanted options. I know I acted tough on the outside, but I was so hurt deep inside. I loved her so much and wanted what we had to work. Ultimately, I divorced her so she could go and be with her lover. I was thinking her lover's wife would divorce her husband, but she didn't. Somehow he managed to convince her that he was framed, and she believed him. How stupid of her. They even cut ties with our group and insulted everyone for not standing by them. As for Andrea, she had no place with us anymore, and she cut ties with our social circle too. Everyone was so disappointed when Andrea admitted their affair started 6 months after our wedding, and they had been fooling everyone, including me. Reputation was ruined too, and she could no longer get favors and support. It's only been 9 months, and I figured putting this here would help me heal faster and relieve my burden. Honestly, that was all that was left of my heart, and I can't guarantee I will fully love any other woman I meet. I have been badly hurt, and it has changed everything about me. Today's second story. In this story, a couple married for 10 days faces turmoil when the wife reveals infidelity. She initially claims assault by a friend but admits to cheating. Trust issues arise as the husband demands her phone. He kicks her out upon confirmation. Reflecting on societal pressures, he gains online popularity discussing modern relationships. Despite remorseful pleas, he remains skeptical of reconciliation. Now let's get into the story. My wife, 26 female, and I, 28 male, were married for 10 days in a relationship for 4 years. It was at this point that she started acting guilty and closed off. We had just returned home from our honeymoon, and she'd been back to work as a bartender for 3 nights. When she came home from work that night, she was later than normal, and I could tell something was off. She got into the shower first, even though it was 3 a.m. She wore more clothes to bed than usual and late curled up on the edge instead of cuddling close like she usually did. My wife and I became each other's best friend. Since COVID, We had grown as a couple and as individuals. We had to work through arguments, disagreements, bad moods, and hopelessness. We watched a lot of informational videos about psychology and relationships together. Sometimes it caused a hot discussion, but my wife actually started to acknowledge that she believed too often that she was right and refused to hear me out on sensitive topics. She always wanted us to be honest with each other, even if it was about us downloading a social media app. We had permission and the ability to check each other's phones. I had a video channel from when I was a teenager, and I honestly forgot about it until 3 years into our relationship. When she discovered this old channel, she freaked out on me. She accused me of lying by omission because I never told her about it. I told her she was overreacting because it was old, and I forgot about it. She did not want to hear that she was overreacting. It's like that's all she heard. The day after we were married, a friend of mine reached out to me regarding a video my wife posted on one of these internet apps. I watched it without telling her, then confronted her about having an account without telling me. She immediately became defensive, saying she only posted videos of our dogs. I tried to tell her that wasn't the point, that she'd been the one to say we should tell each other if we join one of these platforms because they tend to be toxic and cause problems. Relationships. Now was her opportunity to tell me I was the one overreacting. That's when I told her I saw the video and knew that it wasn't the dogs, it was of her dancing. She was surprised I saw it and knew the truth, but she didn't let that motivate her to take accountability or admit she lied. Instead, she asked me why I had to turn this into a reason to fight, and said she didn't want me to make a big deal out of this since she didn't make a big deal out of my video channel. I reminded her that that was from years ago, and this video of her dancing was made the day after our wedding, behind my back. She apologized to me, but it felt forced, like she was cornered into it. That brings us to 10 days after our wedding, when she came home late from work at the bar and showered before laying curled up on the edge of the bed. The bed started shaking a little. It felt like she was stifling her sobs. I sat straight up in bed and asked her if she was okay. She only nodded, trying to cover her face. I turned on the light and stared at her while she cried, expecting her to start talking. She finally admitted she cheated on me, but she didn't say it like that. She said a guy offered to give her a ride home when her car didn't start. She told me she accepted and that he forced himself on her. I freaked out. I started screaming and crying in disbelief. I told her we were going to the police and needed to find this guy. I asked her if she knew him and what he looked like. She hesitated before answering me. Then she said she didn't want to tell the police because he was a friend of hers. I found it hard to control my breathing, and I started pacing. It was hard for me to clarify this situation with her because a voice in my head kept telling me that she wanted to sleep with this man. She was only sobbing at first because of the guilt she felt, but she couldn't tell me that because she didn't want to suffer the consequences of cheating. It didn't take long for me to start screaming at her to get out. She didn't want to report this friend of hers for forcing himself on her because she didn't want him to go to jail. I asked her repeatedly if she wanted to have intimate with this guy, and she said no. When I asked her to give me her phone, she went silent before asking me why. I said I wanted to check her messages, and she became extremely defensive. She wasn't upset anymore. She was mad at me for refusing to trust her. I reminded her that we had a rule between us, that we could always check the other person's phone because trust is continuously earned. I told her she seemed like she was lying and trying to avoid consequences, so by letting me check her phone, she proved her innocence. She refused, so I kicked her out. I started shoveling her stuff out onto the sidewalk. I grabbed trash bags and started throwing anything of hers outside. Despite her cries for me to stop and listen, she finally snapped out of anger, not remorse, and told me I was right. She did sleep with him, and he was better than I ever was. Right there was the warped woman my wife had become. Her ego started to inflate until she couldn't resist the temptation to find another man. With all the dating apps and throwaway culture we live in, I wasn't really that surprised. I was just extremely disappointed that it happened to me. I loved this girl, and I know she loved me, but she let her ego control her decision-making and make her believe she shouldn't have to be held accountable or suffer through any repercussions. After the dust settled, I started my own channel, talking about this crisis and how women today are being told they don't have to compromise, respect, or honor their man. As a matter of fact, many women today foolishly believe they don't need a man or any man at all in life. I became pretty popular, which only made my ex jealous and remorseful. Months after I kicked her out of the apartment, she started begging my forgiveness. She wants to get back with me badly and tells me every day that I was and am the man she's meant to be with.